Hello, Facebook world. We are live for Hot Thoughts Volume 8, joined by my good friends Chris Abel and Adam Baker. And so, as we normally do, we want to kind of let people gather and do this. And so, Adam and Chris, I'll invite you to do this, but anyone watching, if you guys want to share this onto your own Facebook page and let people be able to join in, to like, comment, share, kind of get it to spread out, that would be super cool. And when we feel like we've reached kind of critical mass, we're going to dive in. But Adam, it looks like you just bought a gallon of milk in. So what's that about?
This is because I'm terrified, man, because you gave me hot sauces of doom and death. And this is just not, I had no idea until you made your announcement today. You were all like, and today, Adam Baker is going to have the hottest hot sauces. This entire thing ever. Like, I'm like, what? I have what?
Yeah. What's your hot sauce? What do you like kind of in your ability? Are you a hot sauce kind of guy? Like, what's your ability?
So I have green Tabasco once in a while. When I'm crazy, I get Tabasco. And then I have a new friend who has given me some Thai hot sauce. And in other words, I'm completely unprepared. Like
I love
it's all gonna be a disaster.
It is.
You know this gets recorded, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Chris, what about you? You have, is this the guest that I heard you were going to bring to join us?
This is the famous Reese's the Doxy. He's my 1-year-old miniature dachshund. He's very affectionate. Buddy, don't lick my face after the end of this, okay? That's not going to end well.
That's animal abuse if you let that happen.
That'd be the saddest thing ever. So, okay, buddy, he's real excited.
Well, before we dive in, we'll do introductions here in just a second. But I would just say quickly again, if you are watching on Hot Thoughts, the group, I would say check your privacy settings. And so if you comment, all we see is it says Facebook user. And so make sure your privacy settings let us see who you are so we can know who's commenting. We would love you to like, comment, and share this out and just help us expand the Hot Thoughts community. And if you're not a part of the already 500-person strong Facebook group, please join that and tune in. But with that, Chris Abel, you're our first guest of the night. So would you introduce yourself? Let those who don't know you know a little bit more about who you are.
Well, wait, what do you mean I'm the first guest? Is it alphabetical order?
That will be introduced tonight. You're the first of the two guests.
Sorry, I didn't pay attention to the rest of that sentence. So, hey everyone, I'm Chris Abel. I'm Danny's cousin. We grew up together.
I remember your first Sunday, or my first Sunday at the Webster site. You came on stage and you introduced me. You said, "Everyone, I want you to meet the slightly less fat Chris Abel." Is what you said from the stage.
Are you guys really cousins?
No. If I take my glasses off and then you squint,
it's like the same person. It's incredible.
Right.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about you.
Okay. So I'm a pastor in Blue Springs, Missouri, at a not mega church or a place. I feel like you've had people on here that are like bishops and writers, and they started website television shows, and I'm just a guy, a pastor. I used to work at a mega church. We can talk about that a little bit if you want, or 2 mega churches, I guess. I don't know if it counts up. Yep. So that's a little bit about me. I used to be an atheist, became a Christian. Now I really try to be a pastor that I wish I had grown. You know what I mean? Like when I had all my doubts, all my questions, like that's the kind of guy I want to be. And so every time I have a conversation with someone that's like, oh, I've almost walked away from the church, and then and then I found this place, and I'm like, yes, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what gives me life, and that's a little bit of who I am. I'm also not a hot sauce guy, so Adam, I'm jealous that you're going up to 2 million, but I'm pretty excited. I'm going for the 1 million. I don't even know what Scovilles are. It sounds really
it sounds
exciting,
really horrific and terrifying.
I feel like I'm going to be more masculine at the end of this hour.
Or something.
You'll be more something for sure. Well, Adam, before we dive in, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll dive kind of into our sauces and our questions.
Yeah. So my name is Adam Baker, and I am the new site pastor at the Webster site at the Gathering in St. Louis, Missouri. And that sounds familiar to these two guys because they have also been there.
We have.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to have all three of us on the show at the same time. I came from a church on the coast of North Carolina, in Wilmington, North Carolina, and have done that for the past 6 years and was a clinical counselor before that. So it's been a wild journey, married, 4 kids, and we'll see if I survive the evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I am confident that you guys will survive tonight, and I think that this will be. I think it's going to be fun, and so I'm excited to kind of dive into our questions. And our topic for tonight is we may dive into a little bit of our unique bond from our Webster connection, but we were texting a week ago as we were kind of preparing for this, and we were just talking about the idea of humor. And I stepped away from my phone for like 5 minutes, and you guys sent like 45 texts just about your passion for the idea of humor in relation to faith. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so before we get into that, though, here's what we're going to do, as we always do. We'll introduce our first sauce, and if you have wings from a cool place, introduce those. And so my wings are from a bar just down the street, and my first sauce is Aka Miso. I roll with it every week, 116,000 Scovilles. Chris, that's for you, buddy. And so,
Scovilles.
Scovilles. What are you rolling with, Adam?
My wings are actually rice. Like that's just what I'm doing instead of wings. So because we made rice tonight.
Are you gonna squish it into a
Yeah, it'll just be like a squished, gross, like wing-shaped thing. And so Danny knows exactly what I have for my first one because he gave
the same as me.
I do. Well, I don't know, dude. You said Akamiso is your number one, but you marked my number one as Arizona Gunslinger.
Oh, that's true. Actually, I wanted to like not start you off right on the crazy. So Arizona Gunslinger, a little hot. It's between kind of Frank's Red Hot and Sriracha, I would say.
Okay. So just so everybody knows, this is what I got my hot sauces delivered in. I have 5 of these, and they're so sketchy, so bizarre.
Yeah. Danny, did you get those from like Quest Diagnostic, where like they put the blood machines in? Can you show that again? I've seen that before. It's what you put your blood donation in.
Yeah. They fell off the back of a truck. So, Chris, what are you rocking with sauce-wise?
Okay, so my first sauce here is from Amazon. Originally, I bought this because Danny had sent me some other ones. They're coming in 4 days. So this was my original accent sauce here. It's called it's peanut butter hot sauce. So look at that. Really good reviews on Amazon. So, and then am I supposed to, is this when I go for it? Am I putting it on yet?
Yeah, please put it on. And so I want you guys to take a bite real quick, and then I will read you guys the question while you take a bite. And while you answer, I'll take my bite. And so our first question is just this, and it could be right now, but what has made you laugh the hardest during quarantine? And so it doesn't have to be a moment in ministry, but like what just as a human living through quarantine, we're all connecting with that. I'll let either of you go first, but what's kind of made you laugh the hardest?
I need to eat more hot sauce. This is delicious. Peanut butter hot sauce. I did not think that would be so good. Okay.
My first wing right here.
There. I gotta say, I could have gone without seeing the visual of your dripping rice spoon. Is that hot sauce on it, or do you have different techniques tonight? Like, are you gonna squirt it in your mouth and then put the rice in?
I'm gonna like flip it.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
All right. So, what has made you laugh the hardest during quarantine? All right, I'm assuming that we'll start off with like, I don't know, less serious stuff, but for me, this is like maybe a cop-out answer. This is kind of dumb. I laughed so hard at the SNL skit about church Zoom. Did you guys see that? God bless you.
I thank you right there for that. I did see that. It was so funny.
Adam, have you seen this
I
skit?
have not seen this skit.
Okay, so basically, like they did a skit like having black church with like amens and stuff, but like it's echoing between.
And nobody mutes themselves.
Yeah, nobody mutes themselves. And then It's hilarious. I laugh so hard over that because I've cried over how difficult it has been to have church over the internet for months and months, right? So like having that moment of just like, yes, SNL even gets how ridiculous this is. I don't know. It felt like freeing.
Yeah.
So that's mine.
I got a good chuckle out of that. Like we had just launched like online services and so I got it in that way, but we were doing these like prayer meetings online, and I had I watched it. I was like, I have been in this meeting just with like half the number of people. So I get what you're saying.
I think.
What about you, Adam?
I honestly, like, this is going to sound sappy but it's just true. Like, so I'm married to my best friend, and she makes me laugh like no one else because I can just be like a complete idiot. She thinks I'm hilarious, which I don't feel like I am, but she's so funny. And so that's my wife, Jen. And I think we have just, and I can't even tell you like if it's like, it's not a particular joke. It's usually just like kind of like awkward human things when we're really tired and we're just talking with each other, and I make a face and we both start laughing. And when she's laughing, I can't stop laughing. And it just gets to the point of absurd tears, which is really, really fun. So I've done a lot of laughing with her during this time. And I can't even tell you
Whoa.
Sorry about the echo here. I feel bad now that I didn't mention my fiance. So she's made me laugh too. So she's over here right now. So Adam, thanks for that one.
Sorry,
Adam,
I'm throwing you under the bus, dude.
Adam, I will add though, and this came today, or maybe yesterday, but what has made me laugh the hardest was that video that you sent of your wife taking where you thought she was taking a picture, but she was taking a video, and watching you like freak, like it was. I laughed and showed it to my wife. I laughed so hard and watched it like 100 times.
So this is me owning this, and she's sitting right over there just laughing at me. But yeah, so Jen has this thing where I'll ask her to take a picture. Like I was gonna do this posed thing with me all scared of the hot sauces, and she doesn't take the photo. She is, but she takes a video of me. And it drives me nuts because she'll just sit there and I'll kind of pose.
Well, what I noticed is that you were wearing a different shirt in the post you made. So did you just get frustrated and take it yourself and do it later?
I did. I totally took it myself. It was like the most like just dorky, petty thing ever. I was so annoyed and frustrated. Very human. Very human. And so I had to apologize for that.
No, I will say that gave me one of my best laughs that I've had.
I'm glad you laughed at it.
During quarantine for sure. So
wait, you had to wait like 4 months for that video to have like a good laugh, Danny?
No, I said that was my hardest laugh. I've laughed up to this point.
Okay. All right. You had some laughs. I just, for a second, I pictured you like months into quarantine and you just, somber through all of this.
Yeah. I will tell you another good laugh I had was we started playing this game called Monopoly Deal. It's like Monopoly, but in card game form, and you play it in 15 minutes. And it's for 8-year-olds and over, but we play it with my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old. And Josephine, my 4-year-old, is pretty good at it, but she gets distracted pretty easily. And it was like near nap time, and we were playing, and she's kind of like losing energy and losing steam, and she like looks at us and like she's like has no energy to grab a card. And we're like, Joe, what's wrong? And she's like, guys, I've got a bad brain, and just slammed her head on the table. And that was maybe that may be the other time I laughed the hardest during quarantine. I was like, where do you come up with, I have a bad brain? Like, where do you come up with that?
That's adorable.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. So, but enough about me. So we're going to move on to our second question and second wing. And so I've got a garlic reaper sauce, I think somewhere in the 160,000 range. I actually, Adam, think you have a different one. I'm not sure what I gave you. So what is your second sauce?
You gave me where is it? Oh, it's right here. I am trying the akamiso. The one
You'll love it. It was great.
Right here.
Blood vial number 2.
Blood vial number 2. I'm just gonna drip whatever this is on my rice.
Chris, what do you got?
Okay, I'm working with let's see here, Melinda, who looks like a very lovely woman. In her original habanero mango pepper sauce. So this is, to be very clear here and honest and transparent, because of my lack of hot sauce resources, the rest of my sauces tonight are all Melinda. So maybe Melinda can be our new sponsor. I've got 3 more here I'll be revealing, and they go from 1 fire to 2 fires to 3 fires to 5 fires. That I did look up the 5 fire, which is the million Scovilles, but I couldn't find any other rating. So I'm in the dark here. So you guys are probably getting something hotter than I am. But yeah. I feel like, doesn't rice kind of reduce the effect of hot sauce?
That was my plan. That was my plan. Yeah.
Is it like milky rice? Did you get rice pudding?
It's just rice soaked in chalk. Like I was gonna get the thing that is the most heat destroying.
Tapioca.
It's like Pepto-Bismol rice. Okay, we're going. Here we go.
Yeah, take your bite, and I'll read you guys the question. So in our text messaging thread, you guys had this really interesting conversation about kind of stand-up comedians, and you guys talking about like how they have this ability to speak truth into culture and speak to things that people can't really speak into. And so I was just wondering, whether as a pastor or as what you watch, where have you seen the humor kind of have the ability to speak, heal, and kind of mend brokenness as you found it? So Chris, you were right. We do get a little deeper, but kind of looking at humor, and we all name this as we prep for the show, like we think humor has this kind of healing property to it, but where have you seen it heal, speak truth, or kind of mend brokenness? And so I'll let either jump in and jump in as you're ready.
Adam, you got enough? Did you swallow your rice there? You want to take a shot? Okay. I'll go for it. I love this conversation. Actually, I was watching a YouTube channel or a YouTube video last week with another. I think it was the channel like Charisma on Command. It's where I get all of my charisma from. I just copy everything they say from that YouTube channel. Not really. I just like a few of the videos. But there's one, and it's talking about how to, it's something like speak with truth in a way that people can take. And then it ends up being all about humor and having some traits that a lot of comedians use. And then in this particular channel, they go through and they show like examples, like clips of different people and how they kind of hone their presence to make a point. And then basically this whole channel is about learning from these people's approach to speaking and public speaking. And so they were talking about this comedian who says things directly and kind of makes uses taboo topics as his material, but not in a way that's just kind of trying to I'm trying to think. There's some people that just like they want to shock you. He's not going for shock value. He can touch on things that you're not supposed to talk about, but do it in a way that's not mocking and not ridiculing and not insulting, just kind of noting, and then it allows people to consider things that maybe they wouldn't consider otherwise. And so it's so funny that I think humor is almost like a key that can open a lock on a lot of people's personalities. And a lot of people, if you come at someone directly, their walls go up so quickly. And so there's this aspect to, if you can make someone laugh, and even at the expense of yourself, you might get farther with someone than if you're showing facts or data. And like right now, data doesn't convince anyone because you can skew it in a million ways, right? We're seeing that all over social media right now. It doesn't convince zip. And yet humor can get results for good or bad. Just my take.
Yeah. Adam, have you recovered from the miso? How you doing? And what are your thoughts on the question?
Yeah. That hurts me. There's a part of my tongue that is really, I need to maneuver where I put the hot sauce in my mouth because I can't keep punishing that one area. So what Chris was saying, I think that point the finger at yourself in a humorous way. Yes,
Yeah.
that's totally like what I was coming down on. Because where I've seen humor sort of disarm people, because when we are talking about subjects of seriousness, or whether they're social issues or whether they're kind of like really kind of owning your own crap, your own sin, whatever it may be, and encouraging others to do the same, I've found that coming at it sideways, typically through myself, works best. Like, and being willing to just kind of point out the absurdity of what it is to be a human being, like to be ridiculous. We burp, we fart, we live life. We live in a body that gets older and ages and sags, and we're trying to make sense of like what it means to talk with people about serious things and not so serious things all the time. So life is absurd. The fact that we're called to live and to lead and to do all these things, there's so much absurdity to it. And to point to that, but usually just to kind of not really make fun of yourself, but to just be human in front of people and to point that out to other people. If people are laughing about that, and they're kind of like, because they recognize it in themselves, right? Like, oh yeah, but you're willing to talk about it in a public sort of way. That seems to really kind of open people up to just kind of owning the fact that we're all human and absurd together. And Chris, you've been encouraged to touch your eyes. Yeah, somebody's not very friendly to you right now.
Wow.
Yeah. Someone made a good comment made a good decision to not change their privacy settings, because I have no idea who said that. But I think because Chris called me out a few weeks ago, I won't just say, that's good. I think that's really right, though. Being able to be a part of the humor, I think, does add some sort of ability to navigate it, right? And even like this show, right? Like, we're trying to be a part of the humor, but also be a part of the conversation, right? And I think that adds a little bit to what we're trying to get at.
Well, and I think making fun of other people is easy humor that only goes so far. Like, because there's a fine line between making fun of a person and laughing at a person and stepping immediately into cruelty. And we see a lot of that being pursued because that's easy to do. You move there. But I think when you look at yourself and kind of own your own ridiculousness, that requires you to not take yourself as seriously, to really kind of risk embarrassment. And kind of like, if you move past that in yourself, you invite people to live kind of free from that as well. And it can actually be a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I was making fun of, I was just going to say, I was making fun of Danny earlier because I was watching last week and I was saying that Shane Claiborne, who is an amazing author and speaker, you're getting some big names on this thing. It's really cool. And I love that guy, and I love the voice he has. And he had this really poetic, beautiful, theological answer. And then he kind of like wrapped it up. And then you were like, yeah, cool. Okay. So what about you? So I made a comment last week. And so you just did it again, which reminded me of it. So I love you. I love you. That's fun. I was going to say,
that's great. That's great. Cool.
I'm already feeling the heat from my 1 out of 5 fire. So this is, I'm a lightweight here, but this is going to be special.
You're doing great. So you're doing great. Okay, cool. So we're going to head on.
Okay, cool.
But here's what we'll do. We're going to go on to the next one. But before we do, and before we introduce our sauces, what I want to say is, if you have questions for Adam, for Chris, even myself, any of us, please put those in the comments even right now. We're going to have that be our question after this one, but we want it to cover a wide spectrum of things. So it doesn't just have to be about humor. It can be, maybe Adam is your new pastor and you want to ask him a question. Maybe you just want to ask a question about, were dinosaurs real in the Bible, and you want to find out if the former atheist Chris Abel, what he has to say about that.
What does Chris have to say?
And so you can ask anything. And so I would say, don't hinder yourself. Please ask a question if you have it. Drop it in the comments now. But as we prepare kind of for our next question, why don't we introduce our next wing? And so I have, or the next sauce rather, I have the Dingo Widowmaker, which Adam, is this what you have next? What does yours say?
That's also what I have next.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you just straight up, man, out of 10, I don't know if I can find, that's 15 out of 10. And that is about 650,000 Scovilles. So that's a lot more than what we just did. And so please dab accordingly. We're going to do this together. We're going to do great. But Mr. Abel, Reverend Abel, what do you got?
Okay, I'm working with tonight's sponsor is More Melinda's. Her Thai sweet chili sauce, condiment and dipping sauce, 2 fires out of 5 fires. I also, I thought, did you see that meme going around today that was like, regular beers, and it's like, this is beer, and it was like hipster beers, and it was like, in 1996, 2 friends found hops that we wanted to make. Anyways, I just think it's funny how advertising changes. Okay, so I'm putting this on, and we're going.
That was our homeboy Matthew Moore who put that on. Shout out to Matthew Moore.
Yeah,
helped me create the brainchild of Hot Thoughts. So you two take a bite. I'll throw up the question, and you guys dive into that. So please take a bite.
There goes the rice.
And even though you may not have words after eating this, Adam, we're going to let you go first on this one. But I want to know, where have you kind of witnessed the power of words in your own ministry as a pastor? Like, where have you seen words speak life? Similar maybe to the last question, but where have you seen the power of words be able to speak just the truth of the gospel?
You okay?
I'm all right.
Your voice just dropped an octave.
Well, it's because I didn't really. Okay. Give me a second here.
Oh, that's good. I gotta say, guys, if that's too hot, Melinda's is just right. It's perfectly sweet and hot at the same time. It's actually delicious.
If we have an ad rep from Melinda's watching, we would love to have you be our first official sponsor.
Yeah. So, I spent a lot of time sitting with people, listening to them process what other people have told them that they are, whether that's through direct words or through actions toward them, or through, like we talk about sins of omission or commission, like sins that are committed against another person, or you just don't do things. So whether it was I was a therapist or whether as a pastor, people are neglected, people are abused, people are spoken to in ways that diminish their humanity. And so a lot of what I've seen as far as the power of words in my own ministry has been to listen to people talk about how they have been spoken to, the words that have been spoken into them, and then to simply remind them of the fact that there was a primal word spoken prior to anything that was ever said to them. And that word that was spoken into them and about them was that they were good, that they were a delight to God. No matter where they've come from, no matter who their parents are, no matter how they were born, no matter what has been done to them or said to them, God has looked at them first and said, you are good, and I love you, and I see you, and you are a delight to me. And that just a reminder of really deep, basic words of truth about who we are as people before any other word is spoken to us or about us or against us. So that's a place I've seen the power of words in my ministry.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. That's really cool. Chris, what about you, man? I mean, you've been doing this across churches and states, and you even said like you were an atheist before you were in ministry. And so I don't know if that adds an interesting twist to it or not, but where have you kind of seen the power of words in your ministry at work?
Yeah. I don't think people really realize how powerful their words are, right? And that's kind of what ends up leading to people needing to talk to great pastors like Adam, because people have spoken dangerous, violent words into their life without even realizing it. And I use the word violent. So easily. And people don't even realize it. Like the things they've said to their kids, things they've said from the pulpit, things they've put online. We act like our words are just cheap and don't really make that big of an impact and don't make a difference. And the stuff we say, I mean, if you just think about it for a second, how many times have you heard someone say, oh yeah, you know what? I just like in 7th grade, I had this teacher and they just made me feel like I was really dumb when it came to math. And, like I just never liked it since. Or someone called me short. I remember in high school, someone said I had a horse butt, which, what is that? And Also, I
My
could
thighs
have.
are incredibly powerful.
Right. I'm like, oh, are you saying I'm strong? Is that what,
What does that mean?
and I said, well, just wait 15 years because a badonkadonk is going to be in, right? Like I don't even know, but I'll tell you what, I remember that. And I bet that person has no clue that they said that. No clue.
Yeah.
Because words have such an impact. So I think about that and how hard it is to be a person who doesn't let words break you down and is also careful with their words. That's that's hard to get to. It's hard to arrive there. And I find that people hurt me still today, right? Like it can be easy. You think that like a pastor is almost like a fixture, right? Or a part of a church building, like, oh, and there's the pulpit, and here's the baptismal font, and then there's the pastor, just he's built up there or she's built there. People have no idea that we're just people too. Like we're just on this Christian journey with people. We just happen to have a role of leadership, And so I got an email from someone. I feel like I have these collection of emails. Tell me if you guys are different than this, because something about me, I get these emails and people just rip me. And I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, but like I got an email from someone during COVID. Things were so swamped. We weren't doing funerals for a while. Someone in the church, their mom passed away, who was a member of the church, and I didn't reach out for like a week, and it totally not right. Like my bad, 100%. Just dropped the ball. Should have been there. Made a mistake, and I got one of the nastiest emails I've ever gotten, saying that like, what has happened to the state of pastors today? Back in the day, you failed at what you do. You're terrible. Like it was just ripped me. This person didn't know who I was. Just ripped into me, and it was hard to actually be in that moment. Just be like, okay, this person is right. They have also just lost their mom. They also probably are stressed out from whatever's going on in their life. These words are not indicative of who I am. These words are correct in that I made a mistake and I need to step it up and I need to be careful not to do this in the future. And I have to say, like, the amount of kind of emotional self-control to be able to process all of that and still show up and write an email back that says, you're right, I'm sorry. My concern now is making sure your mom has the best possible funeral and that I capture her spirit and who she is. And then sit down across from that person a week later and plan a funeral and be 100% attentive and take it 0% personally. And still in the midst of that, and here's full circle here. Full circle here. Use humor to still try to woo that person. Even though they thought I was despicable, right? Because my job is not to be liked and my job is not to be an equal to that person. It's to, my dog right now is freaking out about these chicken wings. I don't think he's ever seen me eat chicken wings, and he is whining, and he's not usually like this. Do you want some hot sauce?
Don't let him get your lips, man. Don't let him get your lips.
Today's sauces are sponsored by Melinda's Dog Food. All right, here we go.
Hey, Beth.
That's my fiance, Beth, who makes me laugh so much. She's my best friend. She's rolling her eyes at me right now.
Hey, so Chris, I want to actually unpack, and you kind of hit this, and this wasn't one of our planned questions, but I do want to just ask this because I remember, like, when I was like to this day, like I remember my wife gives me a hard time about this, my mom gives me a hard time about this, my brothers, whole family. But I remember, like, growing up, like, it took me like forever to learn how to read, and like I had a first, second grade teacher like say something to the effect of like, you're dumb, like, for that, right? And I still have to navigate with that. Like, I have a master's degree, like I have a bachelor's degree, like I was the first person in my family to do that. Like, there were so many things that I did, but I still to this day, like, if someone questions something about me, like, that is based in knowledge, my first response is like, oh man, maybe I'm not smart enough to be here. I don't deserve a seat at the table. Like, I shrink back into my insecurity, and like, that's my own thing I'm dealing with. But I wonder for you guys, like, because you kind of touched on this with your horse booty. But I wonder, like on another level.
Please don't let that be like a recurring joke.
Yeah, but on another level, I do wonder, like, are there things, because I think that's something that our audience as pastors and as people that aren't a part of the church or are a part of the church wonder about, like, how do we navigate that? Like when there's hurt that like, because I'm a pastor and you said this, like, we're not just fixtures, Chris, like we're real people navigating emotions. And every day I stand up and wonder, am I smart enough, good enough, whatever enough to be doing this? And I wonder for you all, like, what are some of the things you have navigated in that, like, talking about the power of words, like, where does that hit you in a negative way? And kind of what are you working with through that now? Does that make sense?
I think something that, so when I worked with kids who were removed from their homes due to abuse and neglect, they were often placed in kind of quasi foster care settings with house parents who were safe and loving and kind, people who had consistent structure and stability to their homes, expectations, rules. And these kids fought tooth and nail to prove that that was false, that in fact what was normal was abuse and danger. And so they would push as hard as possible. And I feel like what happened is that they kind of eventually broke because there was a consistent word of love. And even though you're gonna literally punch holes in my walls, like, I'm gonna keep saying to you, no, you're safe here. No matter what happens to you, you're safe here. These are the rules. I'm gonna ask. I'm not just asking you. You have to do this, or you have a choice. You can either follow the rules, or you can sit there. But you have to do this. And I feel like when it comes to words that I have heard or received that have been impacting to me in negative ways, and I have received them. I've been haunted by words that people have spoken to me, even within the past like 2 to 3 years, and they stick with you. Because I'm enough of a people pleaser and a people person that I don't want people to not like me, or to know that I've like maybe I've done something wrong, or I haven't done something that I should have done, Chris, like you talked about, or I have said something that, because people are going through their own stuff, what I said, which was completely innocuous to me. Like, I was just like, I'm going to talk about this thing. And for whatever reason, something, dude, absolutely. Like, it's like our words are always flowing over people, but sometimes we are completely unaware that there has been there's a wound that's opened up in them, and our word slides over it and catches and pulls. And those people, when they react back to you, like, they are trying, like, it hurts them. Like, and so I think about these kids, like, who had been hurt their entire lives, and good words are flowing over them, and they're trying desperately to say, no, like, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense to me. I am actually more comfortable with pain and trauma and craziness, because that's what seems normal to me. And so in my own life, I think about the base level words, like my parents, who have always loved me and have always said, you are loved, you are safe, you are heard, God loves you and treasures you. Like, that has been like a base level for me. Those are my words that I've received all the time. So when someone says something negative, it's a barb that sticks in a weird way. It's alien to me. And I've had to kind of really work. It's almost kind of like I have to work that out. Like, those kids have had to work that out in a reverse way. So that's a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No, I felt the emotion of that. What's cool about this is I don't even, at this moment I'm calling it out, but like we could be sitting at a table together having a conversation over some beers, right? Like then now we're just talking to each other, right? We're having a conversation where people talking. I love this. And this is life-giving to me, because I feel like I haven't had this a lot in the last 4 months. But Adam, what you just said,
Chris, you got straight Kirk Cameron. You got raptured for a second.
Am I back?
You're back there. Yeah.
Start over.
Okay.
Go. Start over. You said you got, and then you got left.
Okay.
We were left behind, and you got taken.
Left Behind, my favorite book series. Are we talking
You
about
went
that?
Your voice is there now, but
Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. I'm still here. I promise. Don't quit on me. I'm just putting it into do not
Don't
disturb
you quit
mode.
on me.
Okay, there we go. All right, here's the point. I was getting all vulnerable. That was unfortunate timing. All right, let me try this again. All right, Adam and Danny, my friends. All right, but here's the deal. I see a counselor every week or two, and
Right.
it's something that I've tried to be active on, and some weeks more than other, or some years of my life more than other. But it's been pretty active ever since I worked at the gathering, and there's something there. That's a real one. Things got rough enough for me while I was at the gathering that Matt Miofsky actually took me aside and was like, "Hey man, have you considered seeing someone? Have you considered getting some counseling and to have someone have that be willing to have that vulnerable of a conversation with you or that direct of a conversation. That was really a gift that he gave me." And one of the things I've had to realize, and one of the conversations that we've had is throughout my relationship, and I've been dating Beth I've known her for 3 years, and we're engaged and getting married in September. And I was telling him about my history and about her, and she's this incredibly stable, person from a healthy background, a healthy family, and she's waving. She's out on the patio right now, waving at me and giving me a fist bump here. And talking to my counselors, I come from a real broken family environment. I come from an environment with a lot of struggle and a lot of challenges and a lot of betrayal. And so when I'm talking to my counselor about her, he says, you've done a lot of work to even be able to consider having a healthy person in your life like that. The fact that you can even date someone like that shows the work you've put in, and that was kind of eye-opening to think, oh, interesting. Like there's something in me that would have actually not been compatible with a really healthy person, and that's something that I've arrived at, which was mind-blowing because of trauma and experience and issues and history and stories and background and words now it actually, you have to do a lot of personal work because people prefer the narrative, like you said, Adam, the personal narrative of the damage and the negative words and the stories you tell yourself and the stories other people tell you. And we get caught up in those cycles and in those words that send us down different paths. And it's actually harder to choose the healthier path, harder to choose the positive path, harder to choose the path with hope. So
cool. You had to do the work to come to a place where you could even hold the possibility of a different imagination. And to think that maybe there is another way of doing life and doing love and doing relationship. And that's been a journey for you, and that just like with the kids that I worked with, and just like any of us who go through trauma and words that have been spoken to us in a really impacting and painful way, we have to unpack the pain and move through it. And it takes so much time and effort and structures around us that give us support, like Matt saying, dude, this would be really good for you. You being willing to go to a person who is neutral and just holds you I'm not going to stand in judgment over you. Tell me
we're 6 feet apart, actually.
Yes.
Sorry, that was terrible.
Okay.
No.
But yeah, it's profound work because we can receive profound pain from the words of other people. Truly.
Well, I will say 2 things real quick. I got your joke 3 seconds after about holding and 6 feet. I just got that. So that was really, really funny. And I will also say that, Chris, I don't know about you, but I feel completely incompetent. I feel like Adam Baker is going to be the best pastor the Webster site's ever had. This guy is hands down the best of the 3 of us. So I'm excited for the Webster site to get a chance to have you, man. You have a great heart for ministry, but just sounding your voice, man, just hearing you talk, you care about the whole person. And not to say we didn't, but I think you are exactly what that community needs right now. And I think it'll be really cool to see you take that over.
That means a great deal to me. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Webster site people, if you're watching right now, there's the stamp of approval. That's just, I don't know what noise that was. Chicka, chicka, chicka. Okay.
Yeah, we both gave them. So I will say, so here's what we're going to do real quick. We're going to throw up, and Chris, I actually love what you said a second ago. This is like three friends just having a beer over a picnic table over dinner. But we want to invite you guys to be a part of that picnic table and that dinner with us and ask some questions with us. And so if you have any thoughts, any questions, anything that you want to throw out, I've actually seen a ton of them pop in. So what I'm going to ask you two to do is, would you introduce your next wing? So I have the Last Dab, a triple X, or which is 2 million Scovilles, Adam. So I'm so sorry. But
Wait,
Mary
that's your next
Weirati,
one?
yeah, we have 2 millions in a row. Mary Weirati says we'll keep you, Adam. Just so you know, she's ready to install you as the pastor.
Thank you.
So, so I'll introduce my sauce. Adam and Chris, why don't you do that real quick, and then I'm going to hunt for our first question, and then we'll take a bite and dive in.
Well, I have the same stinking hot sauce of death that you just described. You gave it to me. So that's the 2 million Scoville. Do we have a 4 million after that? Is that
No, two millions in a row. 2 2s in a row.
because
Well,
by that
this
point,
is-
I wouldn't have taste buds anyway. So 4 would probably.
This is 2 million. This is 2+ million. So we don't know quite what that is yet.
Oh.
You're gonna do great. I'm proud of you, man. Chris, Abel, what do you got?
All right. I have the Melinda's habanero honey mustard. 3 fires out of 5 fires.
Right.
I think that's probably pretty close to 2 million.
Yeah. Well, so before we go into this question, we'll take a quick break to give a shout out to our sponsor, Melinda's. Thank you so much for supporting us. No, but so here's
Somebody can win these tonight.
someone can win those. I like that. I would say so. Chris, why don't you start us out on this, because I think this one will be Brutalica. So the question is just this, from our boy Mike Wilcox. We know him, Adam. You're going to know him soon if you don't already. But how can your role as a pastor help mend political divides that exist everywhere?
First of all, Melinda just keeps outdoing herself. A little hotter, but also delicious. I think I'm going to keep these, Danny, and have wings for the next year.
I love it.
Okay. So this one's really funny. Not funny. This one's challenging. Here's the deal. Politics is if human beings disappear, politics would disappear, which essentially means that politics are tied directly into humanity, right? It's part of human beings, and in church and faith and religion is intertwined with people's lives, with humanity. And so I think just in America do we have this concept that, man, is my face swelling? Woo! Or is that just something else? That's just probably eating too many carbs today. Okay, so we have this idea of separation of church and state, which is great in theory, but then I think what's happened is we've kind of subconsciously assumed that religion can tap into and talk about everything except politics or except the political system, as if we're not supposed to touch on that stuff. Now, there's all sorts of pastors who are very, very partisan, and they're obvious about it, and they probably shouldn't be, and I probably think that's where the line is. But I think there's something weird too. People are like, "Oh, I just can't believe the minister's talking about politics." Well, the reality is politics is about human beings and life and choices and the laws of the land that impact human lives. So I think, first of all, that if a pastor's not talking about politics in that human lives can be political, and that that legal thing, that the legality of politics impact human lives, then I think we're missing the boat here. So just not talking about it, I think, is not the rule of law. There is not what our country's set up as. It's not the same thing. That being said, that's a big prelude to this, right? Is that Christians, and this is what blows my mind. I think sometimes we can preach to be liked, We can preach to get numbers. We can preach to get attendance. And those things are very different than trying to form Christians. And this is where I think the church in America has gotten mixed up a little bit, is formation is a lot different than memorization. And we've raised a whole generation of Christians that are just memorizing the right things to say, praying the exact right prayer, having the exact right political stance, having the exact right theological stance, and then that's it. And then they don't actually have any transformation that happens in their lives. And formation should be the utmost concern, I think, of preaching, is helping a person not just live a thoughtless life that kind of flows and directs in a random direction, of like having, no intentionality. That's how most of us live our day-to-day lives, right? Is that we kind of drift, we take it for granted. One day we get up and we have an illness, or we have a terminal illness, or our wife or husband has walked out, and all of a sudden we're like, and we have to actually be intentional and think about our lives again. And it's so easy for us to instead just get into a drift and stop being intentional. And I think formation is the opposite of that. Formation is always saying, where is God challenging you? What is your next step? How is Christ moving in your life? Well, how does this look different? And formation grows Christians to be more and more like Christ. And our allegiance is to the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of God, not to a country. And so that is something that I see actually more and more across different denominations. But I love seeing language that says, hey, listen, and this is kind of on theme, right, for 4th of July weekend, is that our allegiance is not to a nation, that we are citizens of the United States, and we can participate in our civil duty, and we can be good neighbors, but our allegiance ultimately is to the kingdom of God, which has no boundaries or dividing lines or borders or walls or whatever you want to talk about. And so when that and that will challenge both political parties. That's the funny thing, is that there's no, one of them might have a particular issue that is more aligned with the kingdom of God, but neither of them are particular. And I think sometimes that becomes, that becomes an out when people don't want to talk about challenging things. So I don't mean that in the way of like, both parties are terrible, and so, don't vote. That's not what I'm saying. I just mean that no particular party represents the kingdom of God, and so we should not confuse our allegiance with a political party, but we should think clearly and critically about, when God is forming me, what does that look like then when I vote, and what does that look like then when I'm involved in civic duty, and what does that look like then when I show up and serve my community? And that, I think, would change the game if Christians actually took that seriously.
Yeah. No, it's good.
I actually read all of that on the back of this Melinda's bottle.
So I will say quickly, just to unpack even what you said further, that we're actually launching a companion podcast to go along with Hot Thoughts called The Double Dip. So please make sure you subscribe to that in the next several weeks when it comes out. But on our first episode, we talk about that exact kind of idea that, and I think it's in 1 Peter chapter 2, like they talk about this idea of like, where are we citizens to, right? Are we citizens like, because that's like coming like after the temple falls, Jesus is dead, they're in occupied government, right? And like, where are we citizens to? The occupying government, to the people that are around us? Are we citizens to heaven? And there is this really interesting concept of like, we want to be a part of the culture. We want to speak into it and speak against injustice, which we see Jesus do time and time again. But where is our allegiance? Where is our citizenship? And our citizenship isn't Rome or Israel or America, but it's heaven. And I think there is this interesting like understanding when we come into politics with that. And so as much, Adam, though, as I want to give you that question, we kind of rapid fire these. So I'm going to give you a different one, which is this one. We've heard a lot about liberation theology. What is it, man? What's your understanding of liberation theology? And we've been talking a lot about it in the situation and the climate of our culture. What do you know about it? What can you kind of enlighten? I don't know if you studied it, what you know about it, but from your perspective, what is liberation theology?
I mean, I'll be the first to own it that I haven't spent a ton of time reading liberation theology or studying liberation theology, but I've spent a lot of time considering who Jesus is and was and will be. And I think that that's inherently bound up with what I understand of liberation. And what it actually taps back into that first question that Chris talked about as well, because I don't see Jesus coming necessarily and arguing a philosophy. I don't see Jesus coming necessarily and arguing a theology, even verbally. He does speak Old Testament scripture as being fulfilled in his person, his actions, and who he is. And I think that that's where, when I see Christ teaching us or inviting us to understand kind of what it looks like for us to live and move and have our being in the world as Christians, what our politics should be. Because I think that like politics is our way of engaging both individuals and us, the structure in which we live. So trying to make sense of that, trying to exercise some realm of control, trying to create a certain direction or to achieve a certain goal. And I love that Jesus comes, and in his being born, he offers his politic. Like he is not someone, an emperor born into power on a throne. He instead is born to a woman who is suspect from the get-go because she is pregnant without being married. And she's of a backwater people in a backwater town. And this child is born, and he is not someone who is great skill as far as like reputation by skill. He's a carpenter. He's a woodworker. He makes with his hands. Everything along the way, what Jesus does is that he offers us a politic that crosses partisan lines, because what he offers us is a way of actually living and engaging other people. And that's where I see liberation happening. What Jesus does is just who he chooses to engage, not what he doesn't go up to somebody and say, and now I am going to talk with this woman at the well. Tell us more about yourself. Oh yes, you're one of those Samaritans. Let me go into the historical background of why Jews and Samaritans don't get along and the ramifications of that. No, he just goes to a woman and asks her for water. She's the one who goes through the philosophy of the thing with him. And he's like, yes, I'm thirsty, but you're deeper. Your thirst is much deeper. Let me tell you about that. So the interaction with the person, the speaking what is true about her, the words that are actually true about her, but what he offers her to her is a word of life and a word of thirst quenching, that as she hears it, she is freed in herself. Let me tell you about the man who told me everything about myself. She is freed from shame to run back and share the gospel with people. And so to my understanding, liberation theology looks at Christ through the lens of how he comes to free, to break chains, to shatter that which weighs down and oppresses the people of God throughout the world. And so it looks like the contemporary kind of expression of it is social justice issues, is looking at people who are historically or structurally oppressed, who are seen as less than in some way, that they suddenly find in Christ the worth that God has seen in them and given to them. And that means that they will not be lesser than, they will not be second to. They are deserving in and of their createdness of much more than that, because Christ has come for such as these. So
that's good. That's good. I appreciate that. So, cool. All right, next question. Is that good for you,
Danny? I'm gonna get you a bullet point list, and you can just cross them off as different responses. It'll be like, what an intriguing response, blank.
That's right.
And you'd be like, I used that one already. Okay,
I promise you, I'm listening. I just don't know what else to say. So Chris, since you're throwing some shade at me, I'll throw some at you, but this is real. This is real talk. You guys have under 30 seconds to answer this question. So here's the deal. And this isn't shade at anyone. Sorry. So what's the funniest story you can think of in the Bible? This is from Kim Jenny, Director of Connectional Ministries within the Missouri Annual Conference. Glad to have you. She'll actually be on Hot Thoughts Volume 10, my friends. And so make sure to tune in to see her. But funniest story you can think of in the Bible. What do you guys got?
I'm going to go real quick. This one's not technically a story, but I think it's hilarious that there is a passage that Paul uses, and it literally in the Greek says, "So gird up the loins of your mind." and then it gets translated as like, so toughen up, and it's like the Greek literally says gird up your loins. So girding up your loins was when like back in the first century you had like a skirt, like guys wore these like dresses, and you would take it and you would tie up your dress in between your crotch so that your legs could be free, so that you could like fight. And so you would gird up your loins to like get ready, right? And he's like, gird up the loins of your mind. And I just think that's absolutely hilarious. But it's like, you know what? You're right. I need to tie my dress up mentally.
Yeah, I don't think Charity was speaking here, but she also just said preach at some point. So I'm gonna throw it in there.
Gird up the loins of your mind, Charity.
What do you have, Adam? What do you think?
So my dad is an Old Testament professor, which he's also the king of dad jokes. So his favorite joke, which makes me laugh every time, is who has the longest butt in the Bible?
Ooh. Oh man,
Anybody?
I don't even know where you're going to do a play on words here.
Yeah, no. Well, as we know in Numbers 22, Balaam tied his ass to a tree and walked 2 miles into town.
That's a long ass.
That's a long butt, dude.
What? I'm not following here.
Dude,
I might be
okay, who has the longest butt?
How did you miss the joke?
Come on, dude. It's like the BUTT.
Oh, he tied
Balaam
him to the tree and he walked
to a tree and walked 2 miles into town.
Got it. Yeah. So it's not. So
It's
I was
not
thinking.
funny now.
Got it. It's not. It's a. Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. All right. Anyone else did not know? Okay. I'm sorry. All right. As the one with the horse butt, I take this a little personally.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Wait. That was where what I was saying didn't mean to catch you on your words.
My trauma.
Let's talk through this.
Wow, that's good. Cool. All right, we're gonna go on. I literally have no idea what else to say to transition things at this point anymore. I don't know what to do. So we're gonna go on to our final question. But before we do, why don't we introduce our hot sauces? And so, Chris, why don't you go first? Adam, since we have the same one, I'll let you introduce it rather than me. So, Chris, what do you got? And how
Don't mind if I do. Tonight's final hot sauce is Melinda's Ghost Pepper Wing Sauce. 5 flames out of 5 flames. 1 million Scovilles, friends. That's half as much as you guys have done, but
it's still pretty hot.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, what do you got, Adam?
The Constrictor? Is
The
that what it's
Constrictor?
called?
That is what it's called.
Doesn't that sound lovely and inviting, everyone? Don't you just want to pour a glass of that?
You know, that's better than Widowmaker.
Widowmaker is really dark and super.
I know. And you guys
pretty
talk
dark.
about how much you love your wives, and you're like, it's time for the Widowmaker.
All right. Well, I've got this much here, Adam. Let's match that and go up there. We'll do the same level right there. We'll go together. Let's bite on 3, and I'll throw the question up. 1, 2, 3, friends. That's pretty hot. All right. So Adam or Chris, whoever wants to take this. So we've talked about like humor in general, and just don't touch your eyes, Adam.
I didn't have anything on my hand.
We've talked a lot about humor, and just wondering what, like, personally for you, and this is more like revelation, like what has God shown you in your own spiritual journey through humor or laughter? So what have you got? Either of you.
Okay. That's a jump. That's a jump from 3 fires to 5 fires. Oh, I'm crying. Hold on, there it goes.
Jeff Allen, he's got 2 million Scovilles. Chris has 1 million Scovilles, and I also have 2 million. He said he was late to the game. Our faces are all melting right now.
I'm eating rice with the sauce. Everyone else has cool wings. I have rice.
What's up, Glenn?
Let's take a moment of silence.
Look, my face is getting red. Look.
Well, just for all my friends, the question's on the screen. Don't forget it.
I like that you saved the deepest question for Steve.
Guys, I want you to know something really quick. I'm not going to throw up, but I will be back in a second.
This is Steve Kozel just made a comment. One time I was at his house and I had a headache, and his wife quietly gave me some peppermint essential oil to roll on my forehead, and it dripped into my eyes, and it felt just about as painful as this, but it was in my eye instead. So there's a memory there, Steve, now that I know you're watching. Oh. Okay.
I didn't throw up. I just
Wait, have you thrown up on this?
I've thrown up after this. Yeah, for sure. The first time I got to 2 million, I found out my body was not ready for that at all. So I think it was volume 3, history of the church or future of the church. I think that's what it was. We got to the end and I was like, nope, can't do it. And I like tried to wrap the episode up as fast as possible. So I could throw up.
Oh.
That was Steve Kozel saying he remembers your peppermint thing in the eyeball.
Yeah, it was good times.
So Chris Abel, what do you got, man?
Right.
Humor and laughter. What's God revealed to you?
You know, this is, you know, I wish I had a more thoughtful answer, but this is kind of off the top of my head while I'm burning and crying. You know, life is stinging hard, and it's hard. You know, and there's so many different levels of this, right? Like, it's hard if you get too much, because then life is easy until it gets hard, right? And then it's hard if you don't get enough, and then it's hard if you face obstacles, and then it's hard if you have you know, a path that's open. You know, it's kind of like Jesus saying, "Blessed are the, you know, people who have all these challenges." Well, I don't think he was actually meaning like life is great when you're that, but there's this blessing of that you learn adversity. You know, you learn how to handle life when it's not great. It feels like the world's really pained today, and the more and more we have cameras on, the more and more we have footage, the more and more we can see what life is like for people different than us. I think the more and more we're seeing the pain in the world, and that's hard. You know, I feel like a lot of what's going on in the world right now with people who are just being awful to one another is that they don't know how to process pain. And to bring this kind of full circle, I feel like God. You know, one time I talked to my friend Daniel Hilty. I worked for him. He's a pastor that you know, hired me in Missouri, and that's how I got to the Midwest. And I asked him once about why things are so inefficient. You know, why the kingdom of God is so slow. Why justice takes forever. Why things are so terrible. And you know, why haven't human beings gotten further faster? And he had an interesting response. He said, well, what if God's not concerned with, you know, efficiency, or what if God's not concerned with maximizing results? And that got me thinking, you know, about the fact that the way that God interacts with us is with this infinite patience, despite how terrible we are. And it's a messy process. And it's a messy process personally. It's a messy process corporately. And, you know, we can be talking about things like how terrible the world has been throughout the COVID response, and how politically charged wearing a mask has become. And we could talk about race and how you don't get the same opportunities if you're born with a different skin color, which is crazy. We could talk about violence, and we could talk about race, and we could talk about gender expectation. We could talk about that still today, that it wasn't until the 1960s that a woman could be a pastor in the United Methodist Church, but today in most, you know, evangelical churches they can't. We can talk about how we cover up the way that, you know, I could list every sort of injustice, right? There's so much terrible things going on, but part of it is that we actually know. We actually know now. You know, before we were ignorant, we didn't know. And I feel like if you cannot find the little, so that all that as a kind of prelude to the point I'm trying to make, if we cannot still, in the midst of everything, have a little bit of laughter, have pockets of joy, have people we love,
Good.
No matter our pain, decide to lean through and then bless someone else, despite the injustice, care for someone else has something going on, despite the rhetoric that's out there, not giving into it, and instead being a person who speaks up a positive word, even if you have to be straightforward and direct, and there's issues that are worth fighting for and being direct for. If you are fighting for an issue of justice and then you lose the inner spark and life inside of you in the process, I feel like that's not necessary. I want to be careful what I'm saying here, because I feel like people lose their lives internally and physically for their cause. But I feel like your impact will be lessened if you do not still appreciate and allow yourself as a human being to still laugh and still have moments of joy and surround yourself with beautiful people and enjoy these parts of human life that for the history of human civilization has always been crap. You know, it's always had issues. We've always had brokenness. We've always had grief. And if we can't still find these pockets of holiness and happiness and hope in the midst of it, then I think we'll be overwhelmed with the despair of it all. That's kind of what I feel like God's revealed to me through the humor and laughters. We got to give some people some hope too.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you stepping out like on a limb there and even just being vulnerable in your own personal, like, it sounded like in some ways you were processing it as you were going too, but like trying to figure out like the place of humor and laughter within that. But I think there's one truth within that as we're all processing it is like humor has, I mean, and someone asked like, what was the most funny scripture you've seen? Like the reason that's asked is because there's humor. I think Jesus is really funny. I think like we look in scripture, like humor is not divorced from scripture. And I think there is something really holy about humor and where we find, sorry, the heat bubbles are coming back up. But for you, Adam, like, what about you, man? How are you kind of seeing things from just like the truth of God revealed to you through humor and laughter? What are you seeing?
Well, it just strikes me. I don't enter any situation with other human beings expecting anything other than people who bear their own wounds and who have hurt other people. I mean, being a therapist was one of those things where I knew that every single person who walked into my office was there because something had hurt them or harmed them or shaped them and impacted them in some way. Like it was just, you were there, and that's why you were there. And talking with every therapist that I worked with, we were all in that same situation. And so I come into any situation like everything that's happening right now, all this stuff, I think we're much more dangerous as human beings when we suggest that this isn't just a part of who we are. Like things aren't getting worse. Like there's an activist named Adrienne Marie Brown, and she says things are not getting worse; they are getting uncovered.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so we must hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. And that's like the fact is, like, I am a wounded person, and I wound other people out of my own selfishness sometimes. When I am tired and hungry, I get grumpy. I say
when your wife takes a video instead of a picture.
She takes a video and it's a perfectly fine joke, but I'm hangry, and yes, like I can be a jerk sometimes, right? And I need to apologize for that, which I did. But I just think that the fact is, like, if I come in and say like, no, we're good, we've got it together, like our country or our group of people or our church or myself as a person, like I've ascended to some like level of perfection where none of that impacts me anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, that's part of being subjective and human. Like, I have experiences that have harmed me and have shaped me. I have expectations, things that were said to me, things that I have said to other people. And it's just part of being who we are. And so when it comes to humor and laughter. The fact is, like, I still laugh despite the fact that I have experienced emotional abuse at some point in my life. I still find joy with my kids despite the fact that horrific things happen to other kids. Like, their beauty is relentless despite the fact that there is so much ugliness in the world. And I think I've talked about this with somebody even today. Like, it's ridiculous. I think the worst travesty that we are experiencing right now is the idea that people are kind of like, it's only this or nothing else. It's only this. And I'm like, what world are you living in? It's never just been only this, and you're getting so angry about this thing. Like, it's this and it's this and this and this and this and this. And that's the beauty of what it is to be alive and to be human, to have different experiences. And the gift of other people is like, we have similarities, but we have such differences at the same time.
Yeah.
And we can laugh together and see how ridiculous we are. And yet at the end of the day, the thing that gives us life is the fact that somehow God still loves us and actually delights in us, even though we are harmed people who harmed other people, even though things have gone wrong, even though there is darkness, the light of God is still active and we are still loved, and people are ridiculous and we do silly things.
Yeah. So, hey, to the folks that are still listening, that we have about, can I get like an okay or a thumbs up in the comments? I have one more a question that just popped up, and I don't want to throw it out there if no one's interested in it. But would people be okay if we threw up one more question because we're about at our time? So would you guys be okay with that? You too?
Yeah.
No more sauces.
Wait, what if I mix them? Would that be?
Stop.
Oh my gosh. Would you please mix them?
This is the old youth pastor side of things. So I'll just do that over here real quickly.
I'm just going to watch you do that. I'm not doing that.
Melinda's combo special.
So while that's being mixed up, the Melinda's cocktail, here's the question. And actually, I mean, you're a clinical psychologist, right? You're a
therapist, not a therapist. Yeah.
Well, I mean, semantics at this point. I mean, you're the smartest person in the room, so that's all we know. So here's the deal.
Not even close.
So here's the question from Steve Kozel, and I thought it was actually really interesting because we do divorce like some things from theology and from the church, and the church has had a hard time talking about mental health. It's had a hard time talking about psychology. It's had a hard time talking about anything that we navigate as humans. And just from kind of your guys' perspective, why do you think that's a problem? And this isn't like, I don't want you to provide the solution, but why do you think we have such a hard time with that?
Adam's the former therapist here, so I feel like he's got the clout here.
In one of my numerous interviews along the way, I'm not going to say for what or who asked me this question.
It was the New York Times, and it was the biggest interview of all time. No, okay, sorry.
Yes, it's very true. But no, this is a person who sees psychology and counseling as suspect, and feels that if you are a follower of Jesus, you need to be looking solely to Scripture and very biblically, like theology that doesn't dip too far outside of just straight Bible, right? And they said, how do you possibly feel that Christians, why would they put their trust in counselors and psychologists when we should be putting trust in Jesus? And again, it was one of those situations where I'm like, why are you creating such a ridiculous dichotomy? Like, like any work that I've ever done with any other human being where we've processed trauma or pain or questions that they have about themselves or life or other people, like it's always led us deeper into our humanity. And I understand humanity as being created humanity that's very like particularly created, that purposefully created, that has intention to it. And that's divine intention. So
Right.
for me as a clinician to kind of be like, well, for the purpose of billing, I'm going to give you a diagnosis that pretty much is not a definition for you, but it is a way that I can, for the purposes of billing your insurance to pay for this, we need to give you a diagnosis that captures some of the symptomology that you're presenting with. And so it's a spectrum. When I say that you're dealing with, I don't know, any sort of diagnosis from the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, whatever version of it is that exists right now. Like, we're using that because out of the spectrum of different symptoms that are listed that kind of fit this disorder or this diagnosis,
Right.
this seems like it captures what you're going through in this moment and in this time the most. And I need to kind of label what you're going through in order to walk alongside you. But the problem is that we tend to say, like, this diagnosis is who I am. And so,
Whoa.
yeah, well, and that happens all the time. I think it's very helpful, like, for the purposes of working through the issues we're dealing with, or if you've got a personality disorder, to know that, like, this is really shaping how you're viewing the world and other people and yourself. Like, so it is helpful, but I think that if you're someone who's kind of like the Bible or nothing at all, that the idea of this label that people are finding definition in other than Christian scripture feels really threatening.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a pushback to it. Like, well, if you're gonna believe in therapy but not prayer, that's really dangerous. That's not faithful. I'm like, but who's saying that? Like, who? I don't know. Like, it's always been a false dichotomy for me. And I think you're right, man. Like, part of the reason that I do the podcast that I do, which has to do with mental health and faith, instructions for living a life, is because this conversation about psychology and faith just isn't happening as much as it needs to be in the church. And so to talk with other Christians, whether they're pastors or lay people or people who are in any walk of life, about what have you walked through? How does faith interact with that? It's really freeing for people. So I think we need to talk about it more. That was long and rambling, but
that was good. That was good. And Chris, I want you to answer it too. And I would say that, but I appreciate what you're saying. Like I was someone that I remember growing up in the church, like, I was told at a really early age, like, I remember, and this is like sad to name, and I don't tell people, like, I don't remember crying from age 9 to 27. Like, because I was told, like, emotions are of the devil and you shouldn't have those. And that's not necessarily has to do with psychology, but that's someone who doesn't understand the idea of mental health projecting that on me. And I remember when, very similar to Chris, actually, going to therapy and having which was the darkest shed of deep, dark emotions ever opened up. I was like, oh shit, I have some work to do. And so I started pulling some things open, and I found out that I had a lot of work to do. But I remember when that all happened, I was just like, man, I wish someone early on said that my mental health had a connection to my spirituality, and those things weren't divorced from one another. We so often, and there's there's this, and I can't remember what it is, and maybe you guys know, there's some proverb that's used. It's and it's just bastardized and twisted, but it's don't have emotions, and or don't be ruled by your emotions. And we've there are people, I heard pastors growing up be like, well, this says don't have emotions, and I was like, that seems right, and so I'm going to go with that. And then 20 years later, I was like, oh, I have a whole chasm in my heart of issues I've never dealt with. And then at 30, I bawled like a baby because I hadn't cried in years, right? And so there is this just massive need for us to talk about emotions and spirituality and mental health. And Steve, I love you asking that question, about psychology. Those things aren't divorced from one another at all. And so, but as the host, I have my prerogative to hop on my soapbox, and I'll hop off it. Chris, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, Danny, I love that so much. I hate it, but I love that you just shared that with all of us. And there's definitely a cultural pressure that masculinity and being a man means having this distorted, weird caricature of emotion and lack of
Yeah.
emotion. There was a study I saw, speaking of psychology, they did a test and they found that boys were more emotive up until 3 years old than little girls. They would cry more. They would cry more easily. And then they would start to understand cultural pressures, and they would change their emotional state. So it blows my mind, and it makes me wonder what the world would look like if there was like a hard reset on male emotion. And I wonder how many of our problems would go away because there's a bunch of guys who can't freaking look at themselves in the mirror, right? And that's a lot of cultural pressure. That's not just like, you're not man enough to be emotional. Like that just, I think, contributes to the problem. But I don't know. There's a whole bunch there I don't understand. But to answer the question, when it comes to church, I think part of the problem is that psychology has changed so much over the years. And so and people who are looking for stability don't like seeing progress, because if you've ever in your life said something contrary to what you believe now, and it's written down somewhere, it makes you look unstable. It makes you look, instead of seeing that as like a journey, instead of seeing psychology as the exploration of the greatest frontier of the unknown there's the universe, but then we have this thing that we have no clue how it works. We have no clue the depths of the human mind. We have no clue about the brain. Like how many of our medications they found by accident. To this day, doctors don't know why you go unconscious. They're just like, that medicine keeps you from feeling pain, so we give it to you. Like, they don't know why it works. They just, it works, so we're just practically, it's gonna, like we have, instead of seeing it like the forefront of where the future is of exploration of humanity. No, we're like that person changed their mind 20 years ago. Like, oh, the DSM changed, I guess it's not trustworthy. And I think there's the difference of that is. Being a Christian is not psychology. However, I would say a lot of what, especially is in the New Testament, is very psychological. And if you look at what Paul's constantly doing to hammer home with Christians is, you got to work on yourself. You got to work on yourself. You got to work on yourself, or you got to be more, I guess, appropriate or proper. You got to let God work on you. And I love the fruits of the Spirit. It's something that you learn if you've ever gone to church as a kid, like fruits of the Spirit are all things that have to do with your mind, right? If you talk about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, that's all stuff that has to do with your brain and your mind. And if you're not going to ever let yourself go there, you'll never grow in those ways. So I don't know. That's just a side note. I think also the other side of it is psychology can be tempting to make you sound smart. And I think there was like this wave of like liberal pastors who were like, the psychology of such and such. And they kind of left the gospel behind and kind of all jumped in the psychology boat. And I think now it has a bad name because of that movement.
Well, I'm going to use a phrase that invites conversation, but we don't need to have it right now. But whether it's you can push that far into psychology, or whether it's pushing that far into biblicism, or whether it's pushing that far into theology or philosophy, there's a tyranny of absolutes. Ooh. That when my whatever structure I'm using, whether it's psychology or any of the things I just listed, when I create an absolute that is unchangeable, where I've reached a point where my understanding captures the whole, and I'm gonna I'll fight anybody tooth and nail to be like, no, this is how it is. This is how it is. I will die on this hill. Like, that is tyranny. That is not freedom. We are not made for that. That is not, like, there is no way that I'm going to climb a hill and be like, let me describe the absolute totality of who God is. I can't do it. Yeah. I am limited. I'm human. I can't comprehend it. And so
that could be like a whole Hot Thoughts conversation.
Absolutely.
You should do like one with therapists. You should get some politicians in here. It'd be like a joke, A therapist, a politician, and an activist walk into a wings Zoom. It's the beginning of a joke there. Anyways.
No, I will say just quickly. I will shout out. We are not far away from, to your point, Chris, the wrapping up of season 1. So we have 3 more episodes coming up, and really excited about that. But season 2, we're going to talk about things like mental health. We're going to talk about things like women in ministry, about how the church should navigate LGBTQ friends and even allies, how we navigate that. And I even asked Adam before the show started, I said, I'm going to let you decide afterwards, but I would love to have you on mental health. After going through an episode, what do you think? Do you think you'll come back for round 2?
I think I could probably be talked into that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate our friends joining us. There is one more question I want to dive into, but I don't feel like we as men have the ability to do it. So I'm just going to throw this out there and say that our friend Jess Rotten, I looked up who said this. So she said, being emotional is seen as a negative in our culture instead of a strength. But she was talking about that she said that, and that was in terms of women, right? And she was talking about that for women and men. And I just think like trying to figure out like how we for men and women navigate like this idea that vulnerability isn't a negative. And I think maybe we'll dive into that in number 2. But I think you guys said some really cool things about that. And maybe before we leave, like it'd be interested to hear as your final take, 15 to 30 seconds, like why do you think as a Christian vulnerability is important to building like a really authentic faith?
What do you think, Chris?
It's a good question. It feels like one of those things that has like a no-brainer answer, but then I think we try to have it all together, be strong, be independent, not need anyone. I think that's probably where sin originates, is like we want to isolate from others and God. And I think vulnerability is the first step of saying, it's almost confession, right? Because vulnerability is sometimes saying I got it wrong. Sometimes it's saying I've sinned. Sometimes saying I need help. That's why I love programs, 12-step programs, right? It's because it's like it lets people say I have a problem, and we don't know how to say that. Nobody knows. Nobody's taught. There's no place culturally where someone learns how to say I'm 100% wrong. That is the theme I see in a ton of people and a ton of Christians not able to say the words I'm wrong. It's so foreign to people's vocabularies.
Yeah. What about you, Adam? What do you think? Just the role and purpose of vulnerability. Like, what do you see in the realm of spirituality and faith and following Jesus?
Well, it's interesting. Even within Christianity, there tends to be a push for total healing, like where I'm not wounded anymore, I'm not afflicted, like that someday. If I believe enough, or if I pray enough, or if I, do whatever, if I reach this point of holiness, I'll be kind of perfectly unwounded.
Right.
But then I'm looking to Jesus as the author and perfecter of my faith. And where does Christ sit? Christ sits at the right hand of God. How does Christ sit? Christ sits even now in the place of perfect holiness as a still wounded human being in a still wounded body. Those wounds are not healed. Like if we're looking at scripture, like he ascends with the wounds in his sides, in his wrists, and his feet, on his head. Like and we know that because like he invites people to put their fingers into his,
right?
Like even prior to his ascension. And so that for me, like when I realized that, like I was freed. I was totally freed. Like I'm not shooting for like a complete lack of woundedness where I'm going to be like, I'm unblemished any longer by wounds, by I'm not afflicted anymore. Like I will struggle, I will be in pain, I'll deal with this. But sharing that, like it's actually deeply faithful to kind of just own that, because our Savior himself is a still wounded person who God points to his son and says, this is what perfection is.
Yeah.
So that's a dynamic to think about and prayerfully consider, because I could spend a million years unpacking that, and it's so rich. So.
No, that's good. Chris got a rhapsody again in the middle of your profound.
I was just boring, Adam, so I was done. Sorry. And my phone died.
No, hey, I will say and this is another, I don't know who said this, but I think it's true. What you're saying, wounds are a part of who we are, right? That's a part of the truth of who we are. And so I appreciate the two of you, man. I know Chris. Chris, you were one of my best friends, had a chance just to like work alongside you, work out a little bit. Kansas City stole you from me, but we still hang out a couple of times a year and get to do things like this. And Adam, man, I just got to meet you a few days ago on your patio, giving you nasty vials of hot sauce and sharing some Kansas City beer. And I just want to thank you two a ton for tuning in and being a part of this, like, and subjecting yourself to spicy wings. But I do think the comments have resounded to say, like, you guys had really cool and meaningful things to say. And so I appreciate you guys just kind of doing this. And I want to give you guys kind of a final take, a final opportunity to shout out. So I would like with the sales rep from Melinda's.
Look at that right there. Melinda's. Don't pour that on yourself.
Chris, you have a chance, since you're the sales rep of Melinda's, you have a chance just to kind of close out, and this is your final take. And so you can kind of say whatever you want. It can be a plug for First UMC Blue Springs, for Chris Abel. You can share a word of wisdom. You can pump whatever. But what's kind of your final thing you want to share with us before we go?
Cool. Well, I know this is there's all sorts of different people from different orbits right now, not even though we share a church background. So listen, if anything I've said resonates with you, church lately has moved online. If you're looking for a way to spend your Sunday mornings, there's 3 guys here who have sometimes things to say. I'm starting a new sermon series this weekend at bluespringsumc.org, and we are doing a sermon series called "How to Fight: A Christian's Guide to Conflict." And so I think that goes. I'm only mentioning that. I don't think I'd throw that out usually, but I'm mentioning it because it seems to be on topic with this a little bit. And so I think if you're interested, you can find more information on that, or please feel free to add me on Instagram or Facebook. Chris Abel, Christopher Abel is my Instagram handle. So, Danny, thanks for just inviting me in, buddy. I'm not going to take it personally that you had to wait till volume 8 and invite me to join you with a total stranger. But that's I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to hang out tonight.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I was saving the best for the third to last. And so Adam, what about you, man? You got a final take for us?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the gathering, we have just started a sermon series called Be Yourself. And it is really exploring so much of what we've discussed tonight, just kind of owning who we are, who we've been created to be, the things that challenge that within us and cause us to really struggle with owning our own identity in Christ. And so I would invite people, if you want to check out Gathering now, you could bounce back and forth between the 3 of us in our online services, but that's going to be going on for a while. And it's an exciting sermon series for me, just given what we were talking about as well.
Yeah. Well, I would say as a pastor who has been able to follow both of you in the churches and the spheres you're in, if you aren't a part of a church, I would say if you're in the Kansas City area, or if you're in St. Louis, check out Chris's church, check out Adam's church. And anywhere, it doesn't really matter where you are. I would say check both their churches out online. They are doing really cool stuff, and I think both their series will be really, really cool. And just honored to have them. And they're both friends, but I would say they're both pastors that are really doing cool things and that are speaking to kind of the void that is in there. And so if you're looking for a church, I would say check them out. And maybe you're a part of a church and you want extra just affirmation. They're doing great stuff. And so tune in. That's the beauty of COVID. You can attend every church in the nation before noon. Before noon. And then the last thing I would say is next week we continue Hot Thoughts. We move on to Volume 9. We actually have our Season 1 All-Stars coming up. And so we've had folks from our first 7 seasons. They're going to be joined and together. And they're going to talk about some of their favorite moments, some hot takes. And so next week, I would say, please share, please invite, and please join us for that. And again, I say this every week. If you're not a part of the Hot Thoughts community, please join in. But episode 9 will be fun. It'll be funny, and I'm excited to have it happen. And so with that, why don't we say goodbye, and we'll see you all, friends, next week.
Bye, Thank you so much, Danny.